Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Joseph Chean, and I'm a missionary. Been in missions work now for 25 years. It's good for me to be here. It's the first time. I've heard a lot about Bethany Church. I was involved with the Bethany Church in Surabaya, and so it's really good for me to see. I've heard a lot about you guys here in Singapore, but it's really good for me to see you here. Can I have my PowerPoint, please? This afternoon, I'm here to share with you a topic that is very close and dear to my heart, and the topic is called Hesed, the astonishing kindness of God. Hesed, the astonishing kindness of God. Before I go into that, I think I should give you a little bit background because this is the first time I see you. I come from, I heard that most of you here are raised either a second or third generation Christian family. I didn't. I came from a non-Christian family where my understanding of God is very much of a family tradition. And I grew up following my parents into the family religious traditions there. And I grew up understanding that if I were to pursue God, I have to go to the temple and to offer offerings towards that. And so when I grew up in ACS, but I didn't become a Christian. So I'm one of those weird ACS boy where I'm a A1 student in Chinese and F9 in English. So all throughout all my years in ACS, I've always been on the last class because I never made it in my English subject. So I'm not sure about you, whether if you have been in the last class for every year. So I was in the last class for every year from primary 1 all the way through to Sec 4. And so during that time, I did not become a Christian. I only became a Christian much later on, which I will share with you later on in part of my story. But my first introduction to the love of God, the Christian love of God, is that it is an astonishing kindness and the goodness of God's love that pursues us. The song that we sang just now, nothing can separate us from God's love, and that He loves us because we love Him because He first loved us. I experienced it firsthand as a pre-believer introduced into the Christian faith. But before I do that, I'd like to give you a little bit background of this word called Hesed. The word Hesed comes from this passage in Exodus 34, verses 1 to 7. I'm going to read the first part, and then I'm going to ask you to follow me on the second part. So the story of this is that Moses led Israel out of Egypt, and they went through the wilderness. And as they went through the wilderness, they came to a place where there was no food, no water. So God created all of these miraculous things for them. God guided them in a form of cloud and fire. Can you imagine? You're talking about a few million people following not a leader, but following the cloud and the fire. Because how can few million people look at the leader? Because it's so far away. So what they can follow? They follow the cloud and the fire, leading and guiding them. Moses was up front, facilitating all of this leadership, this entire camp. They were just following the cloud and the fire. And every time when they encounter a difficulty, God will show up and they will experience a miracle that come out of that. So after a couple of years, God invited Moses up to Mount Sinai, and God began to have a conversation with Moses in Mount Sinai, and that conversation lasted for 40 days. And because it was so long, the people thought that Moses was dead. So they pressured Aaron to build them a golden calf. And when Aaron built the golden calf, God up in heaven together with Moses up in Mount Sinai was talking to Moses, and God told Moses that the people have turned into the idolatry. Moses did not believe that. Until he came down from the mountain, he heard the sounds of the Israelites celebrating, and he thought it was war. But Joshua said it was not war, it's celebration. And when Moses came down, Moses saw the golden calf. Now what happened was, because God was speaking with Moses for 40 days up in the Mount Sinai, the Israelites wanted to make a god for themselves. Therefore, they pressured Aaron to make a golden calf. And when they make the golden calf, they all basically bowed down to worship him. So Moses took the 2 Ten Commandments, 2 tablets, right? And he crushed it and destroyed the golden calf. And he went through a major time of a lot of quarreling and scolding and contention with the nation of Israel. And then Moses decided that instead of asking God to kill all of them, Moses decided that he will plead for mercy towards the nation of Israel. Nation of Israel deserves punishment. But Moses decided that God should forgive them, and he put himself between God and the nation of Israel that deserves that, and says this to God, God, if you were to remove them, then remove my name as well. Moses put his life at stake and pleaded with God. And because of Moses' pleading, God says, I will forgive, but come up. And so this is the passage that talk about how Moses failed in some ways because he destroyed the tablets that God gave to him, and then how he was carrying the place of intercession on behalf of the nation of Israel. And now he goes back to the Mount Sinai, and this is what God said to Moses. Okay? The Lord said to Moses, chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first one, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. So the first time, God created the tablet and gave it to Moses. Second time, God said to Moses, because you broke it, you go chisel it out. Now, I'm not sure if you understand what it means to chisel out tablets from a rock. It is not laser print. It's definitely not a 3D printing. It was hand carved and hand chiseled out through the whole process. How long would Moses have taken? We don't know. But all we knew was Moses had to chisel out 2 tablets with his own hands. And then it says there, be ready in the morning and then come up to Mount Sinai. Present yourselves to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain, not even the flocks and the herds may graze in front of the mountain. So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up to Mount Sinai early in the morning as the Lord had commanded him. And he carried the 2 stone tablet in his hands. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord, and he passed in front of Moses proclaiming. Let's read this together. Ready? Go. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to the thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punished the children and the children for the sins of the parents to the 3rd and the 4th generation. This is the first time in scriptures that God introduced himself of who he is. First time. First time in the Bible that God actually introduced himself in a very clearer definition on who he is. In fact, it is from here that the rest of the Bible, whenever you read the Bible that says that his love endures forever, it came from here. Whenever you read the Bible verses talk about God being slow to anger, abounding in love, it came from here. So the rest of the scriptures follows this particular introduction on who God is. So when we look at the word Hesed in the normal English language, it simply means the loving kindness of God. But when you study the word Hesed, there's no one word that can fully describe Hesed. In English, we needed 110 words to fully describe what Hesed is. And this is amazing because when I studied this word Hesed, I realized that not a single word. So the word love of God is too small a word. The word love of God, the word pursuit, nothing separates us from the love of God. It's too small a word to describe what Hesed is. So in English, it requires 110 words to fully describe what Hesed actually means. So what is Hesed? Hesed is when a person from whom I have the right to expect nothing gives me everything. When a person from whom I have a right to expect nothing, that means I don't deserve anything at all, that person chooses to give me everything. Not a second chance, more chances than you can possibly imagine. So the Hesed of God is unending, has got no end at all, and the Hesed of God pursues us. So God, in this word Hesed, he's perfectly just and exceedingly merciful. Now, these 2 words contradict each other. You either go justice or you go mercy. But in God, these 2 words are held together perfectly perfect, just like 2 sides of a same coin. In God, justice and mercy are held together perfectly well together, just like 2 sides of the same coin. So justice upholds righteousness and equity and demands the penalty of crime be paid. So when you do wrong, under the face of justice, you ought to pay for your crime. But mercy champions compassion and grace, and thus demand the penalty be waived. So this too goes hand in hand. Thus, the cross is a perfect combination where justice and mercy were all intertwined together. Because at the cross, Jesus fulfilled both justice in terms of punishment on our behalf and gave us mercy that we don't deserve. So Jesus took hold of everything that we have done, we will do, and we will continue to do upon himself so that we can receive the second chance, endless second chance in God until we reject him. So there are two words I would like us to look at, the nature and the character of God. One of my first encounter after I became a Christian is this term called the nature and the character of God. So what is nature? Nature is what is God. It's the intrinsic part of God. And when God reveals his nature, he's revealing his power and his greatness. For example, when we think about nature of God, we think about the omni thing about God. Omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. God is infinite. God is eternal. God is perfect memory. God is invisible. And all these are aspects of God that you and I can never be. No matter how much you pray, Kenneth, you will never be invisible. You can try. No matter how holy you are, you will never be omnipotent. You can try. Because that belongs to God and God alone, right? So I'm sure many of you here, you've been on holiday for many different places. So in YWAM, one of the places that we go to in YWAM in terms of the place whereby we do most of our meetings is in Hawaii. So I was in Hawaii, and it was my birthday on that particular day. So a friend invited me for a birthday dinner, and the birthday dinner is held in a restaurant that's under a tree. This tree, this lanai tree, it's a banyan tree that's got very huge branch, and the branches is so big and so thick that you can actually have a restaurant at the bottom of this tree. So the restaurants were all on the sand under the tree, facing the ocean. So we went there at about 5:30 in the evening. They serve us our cocktails and our drinks, and then the waiter asked all of us to turn our chairs and to face the ocean. Now, as a missionary, I've seen many sunsets. Okay, so I thought to myself, what would be so different? I'm sure sunsets are beautiful, but what would be so different from this sunset in comparison to the African sunset or the Asian sunsets, right? So I turned my chair facing the ocean, and of course you see the Hawaii, the horizon is beautiful, right? The sky and the ocean is just beautiful. And then you see this big ball, this big red ball. It touches the horizon, and it begins to go down very quickly. In fact, less than a minute, the sun will disappear. So it touches the horizon, and as the sun disappears from the horizon, the waiter shouted to everyone in the restaurant, "Don't blink!" So we all open our eye big, right? Not to blink, right? Because why? When the sun disappears from the horizon, the entire sky turns luminous green. That I've never seen before. There is a magnetic force in the South Pacific that somehow have this dynamic that the moment when the sun disappears from the horizon, the entire sky turns this luminous green. And instantly, the entire restaurant clapped and cheered. Woo! I thought to myself, who just put up a show? God. God did. And when God put up a show, humanity, regardless whether you believe or not, you will be inspired to use this word awesome. That's what awesome actually means. It's that God has done something so spectacular that you cannot help it but to give praise, but to clap and to cheer what God has done. That is the nature of God. So when we look into our response, whenever God reveals his nature, is reverence, a sense of awe. Wow, this is awesome that God has just done this amazing thing. Now, character, on the other hand, talks about who God is. And that has got to do with the moral aspects of God. And whenever God reveals his character, he's actually trying to pull us together into a relationship with him. When God reveals his nature, he's trying to show us his power and his greatness. But when God reveals his character, he's trying to draw us into a relationship with him. And God's end goal is so that as we know his character, we will enter into a love and an intimate relationship with him. And when you combine both together, this is what you should see. Now, this is my own quiet time. This is how I see God, and this is how I study and understand Him. On the left-hand column is a list of God's nature, whereby He says, this is who I am, and when you encounter this aspect of me, worship me. The middle column says that this is what I do, this is who I am, and the right-hand column, and this is what I do with who I am, is God's character and God's expression. And God says, this middle part is where you are to be like me. You are to be like me. This part here, He says, I'm not sharing it with you. This is who I am, and this reserves me as a king of all kings. But this is where I draw you into a relationship with me so that you may know me. But when you know me, look at what I do with who I am. So when you look into scriptures, the Bible always shows an aspect of God's character, and that character always unpacked into a practical action, a practical vocation, a practical expression. So as we look into God being a humorous, creative, beautiful, He sings, He dances, He designs, you look into scriptures, you'll find that scripture tells us that God is a potter and painter, a writer, a poet, an architect, a fashion designer, and a builder. Therefore, as Christians, you're all studying right now. You're studying STUD. Okay. What are you studying? Com science. Com science as in IT, okay? Computer science, you mean? Okay, computer science. So as you study the aspect of God's technology and everything, to me, the church is one side that introduces who God is. Your school and your vocation is an expression of understanding of who God is. What you need to do is to connect these two together and look at God, not from the lenses of the church, but from the lenses of the society. So, the church, on the Sunday, we meet together like this, and we review God as a God of mercy and grace. Mercy and love. And in the church, God reveals Himself as a great high priest. But where is the church from Monday through to Saturday? In the society, right? So in the family, God reveals Himself as a parent, and God's character is nurture and safety. In the sphere of education, God reveals Himself as a great teacher, and God's character is as knowledge and wisdom. In the sphere of the business, God reveals Himself as a great provider, and God's character is goodness and kindness. In the sphere of science and technology, God reveals Himself as a creator, a healer, and God's character is that He desires all humanity to have better quality of life. In the sphere of communications, God reveals Himself as a communicator, and God's commitment is accurate, timely truth. In the sphere of the government, God reveals Himself as a King of Kings, and God's desire is justice and development of the nations. In the sphere of the arts and entertainment, God reveals Himself as a great artist, and God's character is beauty and harmony. What you and I need to do is to learn to look at scriptures from the lenses of the society. So if you are an artist, if you are a technician, if you are an engineer, then you should look at the Bible from an engineer's perspective. If you are a doctor, you should be looking at the Bible from a healthcare perspective. If you are a lawyer, you should be looking at the Bible from the law's perspective on what does God say about the governance of a nation. If you are a politician, if you are involved in any form of governance of a nation, you should look at God as a nation builder. If you are a parent, you look at the Bible from the lenses of a parent, and you see how God parents a child. In fact, the Bible is applicable to every aspect of your job, of your studies, and of our society. God has called the church, every one of us, to change nations, to bring change to our nations, to bring change into our environment wherever you are. Your Christianity need not be disengaged from your work. Your Christianity can be fully integrated into your studies and every part of it, because that is God's original intent for education. Do you know that university was started by churches? Universities was first founded by churches. Why? Because the original intention for universities is to raise up Christians. They will be educated with competency of the society so that you can go out and change nations. That was God's primary reason for why education started. So, when we look back into Singapore 200 years ago, you guys were not here yet. I wasn't here yet. 200 years ago, the missionaries came to Singapore. Come on, Singapore is so kecil. It's so small.
right? 42 kilometers by 28 kilometers. It's so tiny. It's so small. It was unreached. Who would want to come to this blob of land? It was nothing. It was nothing. It was only a trading hub here in Singapore. But the missionaries found us. When the missionaries came to Singapore, they did not preach the word first. What did they do? There were two things that they built in Singapore. Do you know what they were? Schools and hospitals. These were the two things that the missionary brought. Why? Because that's what the society needed at that point in time. So the word, as in the gospel, became flesh in the form of education and healthcare. And the people in Singapore saw the glory of God. They didn't just hear, they saw the glory of God, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So the missionaries came and they embodied their gospel message in the form of truth and grace. And that was how churches were built. Where you guys come from in Indonesia, only wealthy people get to go to private schools, Christian schools. Christian schools are only reserved for people who have money. In Singapore, Christian schools are public. I went to the Christian school as a non-Christian. I went to ACS as a non-Christian. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I come from an extremely poor family. And because of the school systems in Singapore, there are at least 35 to 40 schools. There are Christian schools and they are public for the poor and the marginalized to attend. Therefore, I, along with the thousands of young people, became a Christian as a result of the education here in Singapore. This story was written after I preached in a certain Methodist church. When I told you that I failed English all the years of my life. And when I was in Sec 4 in ACS, a major problem happened in my family. And we were at the verge of just breaking up in my family. And this is a month before my O-levels exams. And I was totally confused. I was not able to focus and concentrate. So as a result, that year, I failed almost everything except Chinese. Everything was F9. And so I had to repeat. When I repeated the second year, my second Sec 4 year in ACS, ACS at that point in time was very difficult because the teachers really make you feel horrible for repeating the school year. And so in my repeated year, because of what happened to my family, I swing from a highly obedient child to a highly rebellious child because I just hated with what's going on at home. So I started to rebel, and I got involved. I basically ran away from my own home. I ran away from my family. And I got involved with a group of friends that loved me and just accepted me and welcomed me. I joined them. I would skip school. I would run away from home and not wanting to go back home and just to hang out with them. Of course, I didn't know it was a gang at the time. But I actually joined. I didn't know that I joined a gang. But I just loved them. And so through that time, we became a band of brothers, and we were very close. They were all English speaking. I was the only Chinese speaking. They liked me because I do their homework. I liked them because they helped me with my limitations. And so as a result, we studied together. And that repeated year, I did pretty well. I passed literature for the first time in my life. I passed science for the first time in my life. In fact, I did very well for my Chinese and for my math. I got A1 for that. I only failed one subject, and that was English. The lowest grade was F9. There was no G10. If there was a G10, I've gotten a G10, you know. And so because I failed, I knew that day that the group is about to split. Right? Because after O-levels, we all proceed to the next level, and all of us desires to be in ACJC, but I didn't make it. And so I knew that I'm going to split away from the group. Now, I came from ACS Barker, the old campus, whereby there's a slope that walk down. And I remember walking down the slope, I felt so depressed that I'm going to split away from this band of brothers that I knew for all these years, so close to, because they were my family by that point in time. And we all went to Far East Plaza at the basement. And this grief overwhelmed me, and I popped 30 pills, and I started foaming in my mouth. I actually attempted suicide. So I was foaming in my mouth. My friend dug his finger into my throat, and I threw up the medicine. Then he slapped me on my back. He says, "Don't do this kind of stupid thing. You'll be fine," and goodbye. And so we left. And so I was left on my own I went out to work. I went out to study A-levels privately. I went to work and finance myself through my own education privately. And through that time, I was one of those Orchard Road kids that didn't like to go home and just didn't like to hang out with anybody at all. I was very loner. I was just feeling very lousy about myself. And so in one of those days, when I was loitering around the streets of Orchard, I met the friend who taught me every bad thing that I've ever learned in my life. That's my group, my gang friends. By the way, he was a Christian. He taught me every bad thing that I've ever done in my life. And so when I met him, I was so happy to see him. So he invited me to the Mandarin Hotel to attend an event. I thought he was bringing me into the club because that's where we used to do clubbing. But he brought me into a ballroom like this, except that the ballroom was a lot more bigger and there were like thousands of chairs. So I thought he was bringing me to a club that was in the ballroom. We came to the club and there was this stage and there was a worship band that was singing, like you guys know. Wow, they were really cool and good. I didn't know. You see, I've never gone to a church at a point in my life. Okay, I've never been to a church before. So when I went into this thing, I thought to myself, how come this club got so many chairs? You know? So I thought, wow, there's a live band. Must check out the dance floor, man. So I went in and I noticed that the dance floor is a long strip of space, and then the big strip of space in front. I say, how come this dance floor is so funny? I guess when people, after dancing, they feel tired, so they sit down. Okay, that's fine. And so followed them. Then the band came on, and then the lights dimmed, and everybody was jumping. I jumped. Why? Because in the club, that's what we do as well. And so as they were jumping and singing and cheering, just like that, like what you guys did, and then the songs toned down, and then the lights dimmed, and everybody's hands were raised. I also raised hands. In the club, that's what we do. And so we raised hands, and they were singing songs, exactly what you sang, Jesus, I love you. Everybody was singing, Jesus, I love you. For me, in the club, we sing Mary, I love you, Lucy, I love you. We sing like just a different name, that's about it, you know. So I joined them now. I love you, Jesus, okay, Mary, Lucy, whatever. Then the only thing I saw was, I saw people crying when they were singing the song, Jesus, I love you. Now, in the club, if you sing I love you and then you cry, it's because you broke up with a person. I thought, wow, many people here broke up with Jesus. You know, this is so sad, right? So after that, sat down, the preacher came out. Wow, the preacher preached for such a long time. I fell asleep and I woke up. I fell asleep and I woke up. I fell asleep. Then when he said, let us pray. I know in ACS, when the speaker says, let us pray, means that it's the end already. He's going to stop talking. And so I woke up, right? Then the worship leader came out and introduced himself as Don Moen. And so he led this beautiful song called I Exhort Thee. 3 words, I exhort thee. Wow, the entire hall burst out into a 6-part harmony. Now, I grew up in a school choir. I know what is a good voice. I thought to myself, wow, 3,000 people able to harmonize in one voice. That's quite solid practice that they have been doing, you know. So I thought to myself, this is so amazing. And then in the midst of that, I looked up to the ceiling and I got a shock because I saw John 3:16 flash across the ceiling with my name on it. For God so loved Chean, my Chinese name, that he gave Chean his only son. If Chean were to believe in him, he will not die by everlasting life. I thought to myself, xiao liao. How come I'm not Christian? Why do I see something like that? But all of a sudden, I had a memory of something that I could not remember. And God said to me, I remember you and I know you. It was at that moment that I became a Christian. When I became a Christian, I was still a very broken youth. I was still very torn and broken with my own family, and I still didn't like to go home. My friend, who taught me every bad thing in my life, now become a Christian, invited me to his house. Now, they live in a very small 3-room flat. There are about 5 people living in that flat. The mom, Peranakan, loves me and always invite me to join them for food. And when I don't like to go home, she'll say, it's okay, you're so small size. You know, you don't take up a lot of space. Just sleep at this corner here, eat, I will cook a little bit more rice for you. And invited me to stay with them. I did. I stayed for 3 years. What was meant to be, you got nowhere to go, right? Just come and stay for a while. I stayed for 3 years. I brought a lot of inconvenience to this family. This family has never taught me the Bible. This family showed me the Bible. I do not know whether will you invite a stranger and stay in your house. They did. They did. They make an extra seat for me. They taught me how to play the guitar. They taught me everything that I've ever learned in my life. It was this family that changed my life. But this family had no clue that this little boy that they brought into the home would one day become a national director of a missions organization and preach to thousands everywhere around in the world. And this is the family. Mr. Wee and Mrs. Wee, I'm sitting in between them. Mr. Wee and Mrs. Wee are very, very humble people. This guy here, Andy, he's the guy that taught me every bad thing that I learned in my life. Does he look like one? Yeah? He taught me every bad thing that I've learned in my life. And through this whole family, I grew. I grew from a very broken young man who doesn't know how to understand love, who doesn't know how to receive love. This family showed me love. Unconditionally showed me love and accommodated me. And then it was during this time that I became a full-time church pastor. God spoke to me. I was offered a scholarship. I'm in audit. I did auditing for a couple of years. I'm into accountancy and auditing. I was offered a scholarship to UK to do my degree program. But God spoke to me, and I laid down my scholarship to enter into full-time ministry as a youth pastor in one church. It was during this time that I became a youth pastor. So my church was in a school called St. Andrew's Secondary School. Therefore, I had to speak to thousands of young people. And this young man here, the guy that's wearing red below the word family, he was a student in that school, and he too came from a very broken family. His parents divorced under the mother's custody. The mother went overseas to work, bought him a HDB flat, and said, "You are staying there alone." He was only 16 years old. When the mother found out about me, the mother came to me and asked me, "Would you be a guardian for my son?" So I moved from the V family to stay with Nelson's family, and Nelson became a Christian as a result of that. And over time, as I discipled Nelson of what I've been shown by the Wee family, I gave it to Nelson and created a home environment for him. Nelson got to know this whole family and married the granddaughter, the one that's next to Nelson. And both of them became a missionary in YWAM. And now they are back in Singapore. Guess doing what? Doing the job that I did 20 years ago. He became the youth pastor of my church, and he now is the chaplain for St. Andrew's Secondary School, the boarding house master of St. Andrew's Village. And so I saw the loving kindness of God flow from one generation to another generation, all because God never gave up. God never gave up. So here's some scriptures for all of us, and I will close. "I will not forget you. I've written your name on the palms of my hand." Notice that God uses the word, "I've written you, I've engraved you in the palms of my hands." Next, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eyes on you. My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor faint when you are reproved by him. For those whom the Lord loves, he will discipline, and he scourges every son whom he receives." Hesed, the loving kindness of God. I want to close with this little poem that was written by one of our YWAM elders. This poem has guided me on how I see God and how I understand him. And I would like you to read this poem together with me, okay? I'm going to start it off like a prayer. You can come and get ready on the keyboards, yeah? God, you are supreme in authority. Read with me. Dazzling in beauty, flawless in character, ingenious in creativity, timeless in existence, the most exciting person. You're unswerving in your faithfulness. You're matchless in your grace. You're blazing in your glory. You are unparalleled in your greatness. You're awesome in your holiness. You're incomprehensible in your humility. You're the author of humor. You're ultimate in intensity. You're absolute in justice. You're infinite in your knowledge and your wisdom. You're unfathomable in your love. You're the fountain of life. You're unending in mercy. You're the owner of everything. You're limitless in power. You're fascinating in your personality. You're majestic in your splendor. You're indescribable in your tenderness. You're unquestionable in your sovereignty. unsearchable in your understanding. You're terrible in wrath. You're mysterious in your ways. And you are the King God, and you're the lover of my soul. How do you see God? I do not know how you see God. I do not know how you understand Him. I think many times we are pretty distracted because perhaps second generation, third generation, this is something that you grew up so familiar with. I didn't. But maybe because I didn't, I cherish this a lot more. Maybe because of my background, I cherish this a lot more. Know the words that you sing just now? God, you are so good. To you, it's words. But to me, it's memories. Memories. Everything that we sang this morning are memories to me. I can tell you story after story to testify that the song that we sang just now are not just words. They are memories. What are your memories when you think about God? Let's all stand. How do you see God? Is it your faith or is it your parents' faith? The words, God, you are so good. Does that mean anything to you? Are they just words? Or are they memories? Close your eyes. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. Listen to your own voices. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Pull out memories as you sing. There's a verse one, amazing love. Do you know this verse? Okay, it's okay. God, I pray for you, my friends. It is really a privilege to be born and raised in a Christian family. Your parents' faith is not your faith. The God of your fathers and your mothers is the same God that He is to you. But you know what? You need to know Him for who He is. You need to pursue Him for who He is. Are you hungry for Him? Do you really want to know Him? Because, God is not someone that pushes Himself on us. He's a gentleman. And He says, this is who I am. If you really want to know me, you need to take a step closer. Just remain standing, Ken. Kenneth, can you please come on stage? Can you stand there? Yeah, come on stage and stand at the corner. So between God and man, there are 1,000 steps. When we talk about the pursuing love of God, God takes the 999. And then He has to stop here. He cannot take the final step because He made you in His image, and that means the choice is yours. God will influence the choice, but He cannot make you choose Him. That's incredible. The Almighty God who can do all things cannot make you choose Him because He highly respects your choice. Brothers and sisters, you got no clue how much God respects your choice. And if Kenneth choose God, he takes a step forward and the union is done. But let's say if Kenneth chooses to turn his back, right? Kenneth, don't look. I want you to go back to your seat, but I want you to just go down the steps and don't look. Okay, wait. Before Kenneth move, I want you to think, when Kenneth choose to walk away from God, what will God do? Can you create an answer in your head? Okay, Kenneth, walk. Stop. Now Kenneth has walked far away from God. He wonders if God is anywhere close. And Kenneth decides that he will turn around. Turn around, Kenneth. He realizes that God has never left him or forsaken him. So when you talk about the goodness and the kindness and the pursued love of God, that's what He does. Even in our most horror state, God is committed to walk with us. That's what He meant when He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. But guys, you need to turn. You need to turn. And when you turn, you need to choose. Because He will not choose that for you. He will do everything possible to be available within our hands reached. But He will never choose it for you. I'm going to turn the time over to a leadership because I do not know what to do. So if you want to pray for them or whatever, I'll leave that to you, yeah?